Hi everyone, this is Kyle with kayDbait. I'm going to be doing a very serious video today on mental disabilities that may harm others. And the topic was, I was talking to somebody about what kind of reaction should our laws have, our government have, to protect people from mental disabilities that harm people. These are pedophilia, bestiality, violent tendencies such as anger issues or blackout episodes of rage. And it's a very, very difficult subject to say what is the right reaction, what is the right course of action to take to stop these things or to punish these things. So the main thing that I thought was the most important aspect was some form of impulse control, because it is an impulse, it is a desire to do whatever these actions are, whether it be to violate somebody's human rights or personal mental stability because you are taking something from them that may harm them. Or animal rights, or to physically harm as opposed to mentally. And none of those, you never have the right to wrong someone. That's what laws are for. That's what human dignity and human rights are for. You are not allowed. And even if you are allowed, you still do not have the right as a human to do this to something. That it's one of those basic moral standards. Also, and on the other side of that, is you do not have the right to judge somebody for a probability or a possibility. You can take preventative measures to protect, but you cannot use it to harm on the off chance that something might happen from it. There are instances where it is justified, where you can say, I did this to protect, not to harm the person I was protecting from. But you, as an individual, do not have the right to make that decision because you do not know what will happen. So it's like, it's not uncommon. It happens where a registered sex offender, regardless of why he was given that title, will be attacked by his neighbors because he has to tell his neighbors what he is what his status is when he moves to a new location. And it is not uncommon for him to be attacked by his new neighbors. There are instances of registered sex offenders being murdered because somebody wanted to protect their daughter or somebody wanted to protect their family. And it's horrific because most of the time, many registered sex offenders are given that status based off of public indecency or sexual harassment, not actually rape or molestation or anything like that. Most of them are from minor comparatively crimes, where somebody got drunk and peed in a fountain at a park, things like that. I'm not saying that lessens the exposure that could damage somebody, but it is not what people generally think. So to say, I will punish you or I will judge you without knowing, because that's most of the time, that's also an impulse problem. You can't just stop and figure out the facts before acting. And I made a video about that before also. So on the next one, where do you draw the line of protection versus allowing somebody to have freedom in their own minds? Most of the problems people say in the regards of pedophilia or bestiality or violent tendencies are in somebody's mind. They are a desire or an impulse or a general thought that is considered wrong to be having. That's what they are. They're a mental state, their mental thought process, where it's almost a preference. And when you start saying you're not allowed to have a preference for bad things, obviously, but you're saying they can't have the thought. And a thought is not an action. A thought is a precursor to an action, a prerequisite to an action. But it does not mean there will be an action. So you have to understand that to judge someone and make an actual action based off of a possibility of an action is not something you can just justify, because it is a very dangerous and slippery slope. There were a lot of cultures that were based off of a very strict mindset, and anyone that did not follow the projected mindset were punished. If we knew what many of those members were thinking, then we would have probably punished them, because you cannot have a society that is 100% like-minded. You can pledge support for something, but not actually be supportive to them. And that's how rebellions start, and how groups against established religion or culture or government start, is the allowance of freedom of thought, because you cannot control thought. So to start implementing laws against certain thoughts, against certain mental processes, you are allowing, in a very slippery slope kind of argument, this is my argument against it, is once you establish that thoughts can be right or wrong, you have to determine which ones are right or wrong. And that is very, very difficult to say. There are certain ones that are just, it's common sense that this is wrong. It's common sense that that is wrong. No. There are far too many cultures. There are far too many ideologies to say which ones are right or wrong. In some countries, not very many, bestiality is legal. In some countries, the legal age of consent is much lower. So what we would determine as pedophilia or bestiality are not necessarily the standard of the world. Once those standards are established, which are mostly based off of experience and mental and physical development as opposed to actual age, then we can probably figure out how to deal with it better. But for now, our society in the United States has an age of consent somewhere around 16 to 18, depending on which state you're in. And also in New York, you can legally get married at 14. You have to be able to standardize based off of some reasonable justification, as opposed to one that just feels right. So you cannot just say one thought is wrong. It's pretty easy to say it's not a good thing, but to say it should be illegal or punished is a very different matter. Okay, we have laws that limit the actions registered sex offenders can have. They're not allowed to live within certain areas near schools or parks or areas that have a large amount of kids. They're not allowed to just hang out there. They are monitored. Some of them are given medications that prevent them from having the physical urges. And those are preventative measures that do not infringe upon their thoughts, but are limiting in that it prevents them from being controlled by their impulses. And that is helpful to them. It prevents them, it's like any law. It prevents you from acting by giving you some kind of preventative measure. And that's the action, not the thought. It's preventing the action, not the thought. And that is a very important distinction. Okay. Let's see. Oh, also, one of the things that you have to understand about this concept is it is far too easy to accuse somebody of being wrong or having a thought with no backup at all, with no, I saw him think that. You can't know that. So if we make a law that prevents you from thinking something, or if we punish somebody for being accused of, because you can't prove it, of being accused of thinking something, where and how do we prove this? If they have illegal pictures or they were caught doing something illegal, those are actions. Those are not thoughts. So you cannot have some kind of law or some kind of reaction based off of a thought process, because there is absolutely no way, even if they admit it, because certain situations may confuse or manipulate them into doing so, but to get them to even admit it is not actually proof that they actually had the thought. There are many, many confessions done by people that felt they had to say something or felt that they were wrong simply because they were told they were. So where one person might think they have bestiality, in reality they just had some weird dream that they had that they didn't understand. It wasn't that they liked the dream, but there are people that are like that. They will feel that they are wrong, especially if the culture becomes so adamant on the subject that thoughts are criminally damaging or are criminally damning. Then you will get these kinds of guilt, self-guilt confessions that are not actually real. There are good examples of mental problems that have led to damage. Of Mice and Men is a very, very well depicted situational argument for the protection of and the preventative measures for mental disability that may harm others. I'm not going to ruin the book. It's probably already been ruined for many of you. But if you haven't read it, you should read it. It's a very, very good book, and it depicts mental illness, or at least mental retardation, very, very well. And it's a good read, so you might want to check that out. They also made a movie, and the movie was pretty good. Let's see, is that it? Okay, that's it. Obviously, there's more on this subject. I don't want to get the video too long because it tends to glitch out and stop working properly. So what do you guys think? What do you think the proper reaction or preventative measures to somebody having a mental disability that may harm somebody or wrong somebody in some way, or an animal or an object or whatever? What do you feel is right or wrong? What do you feel should be done? And please comment below, and I hope you guys have a nice day, and peace.